I'm beginning today my discussion of the fifth and final founder that I cover in my Prager University series on the American founding. It's called The Making of America, 5 videos, 5 minutes each. If you haven't seen them, go watch them at prageru.com. But I've talked about Jefferson and Hamilton and Madison and Adams. And now I turn to Ben Franklin. But a little bit by way of a preface to Ben Franklin. I really like Ben Franklin. I think it's partly because, to me, Ben Franklin represents the self-made man. The self-made man. That's a phrase, by the way. That was the title of speeches that Frederick Douglass, the runaway slave, gave. He identified with this idea of a self-made man, someone who had to sort of make himself anew after he became a free man, when for the first time his destiny was in his own hands. And that's kind of the way I felt when I came to America, because I felt that suddenly I am in a society in which my destiny is not so much given to me as it is built or constructed by me. And I realized that I would be able to do things with my life that I couldn't do in India. And so being the architect of our own destiny, being in the driver's seat of our own future, this idea of the self-directed life, I think, is quintessentially and exceptionally, to use that phrase, is exceptionally American. Now, the American founding is the transformative event that made self-made men, self-made persons, possible. Of course, before the American Revolution, you did have some self-made individuals, male and female, but they were very rare. After the revolution, their number grew exponentially. And the man who kind of helped bring about the shift, and the man who embodied the shift, a self-made man before the founding who became the patron figure of the Constitution that multiplied his type of person, this was Benjamin Franklin. Walter Isaacson, in a pretty good biography of Franklin, says he was, quote, the most accomplished American of his age and the most influential in inventing the type of society America would become. So then that raises the question, well, what kind of society? Well, we can see that's by looking at Franklin himself. This guy conveyed this indomitable spirit of invention, but not just invention, but also self-invention. And I think these are the two ideas, the inventiveness of America and the self-inventiveness of Americans, that makes Americans recognizable all over the world. They're distinguishable even today by people around the world. Now, Isaacson talks about Franklin's varied career. He was America's leading scientist. He was an inventor. He was a diplomat. He was a writer. He was a publisher. He conducted electrical experiments aimed at lighting Philadelphia streets. He devised bifocal glasses. He designed a new type of stove. He organized lending libraries in Philadelphia and a volunteer fire department. He founded the American Philosophical Society. He became a printer. He became a publisher. So this is Franklin. He concocted all kinds of plans for uniting the colonies into a new type of society. And at a critical time in the Philadelphia Convention, this was, by the way, the debates had frayed everybody's nerves. They were not able to find agreement. Things were breaking down. Tempers were flaring. And people turned to Franklin to sort of save the day. And Franklin basically said, you know what? Let's pray. And so he summoned, and Franklin, by the way, not an exceptionally devout man, little bit more of a deist, as was Jefferson. In this sense, they were not like the majority of the American founders, who were actually quite devout. And Franklin's prayer sort of calmed things down, and things were able to then move forward. Now, Franklin viewed America itself as a great invention, an invention of philosophical statesmanship. And yet, says Isaacson, concluding his book, he goes, quote, the most interesting thing that Franklin invented and reinvented was himself. And this is why I like reading Franklin's autobiography. It's a very short book. I mean, it's probably less than 100 pages long, very slim volume. But you see a man in it who springs to life. He's endlessly curious. And he's not just curious in the sort of, well, curiosity killed the cat. Some people you'll find, and kids are like this, they're curious about everything, but it is a kind of idle curiosity. And it's a little bit like, well, why does this dog have a bushy tail? And, that's not Franklin. Franklin's curiosity is practical. It's aimed at sort of getting things done. So he sees construction workers with axes. They're building a fort. And so he goes, let me time them. Let me see how long it takes them to get something up. He's told that Native Americans, the Indians, are very good at concealing their fires. And so he studies, well, how is it that they conceal their fires? How is it that they prevent the smoke from being detected? He investigates the cultural and matrimonial practices of the Moravians. He does experiments on electricity. And when a French pedant scholar challenges him and says, what kind of experiments are coming out of America? Franklin refuses to reply. He just says, listen, my time is better spent, quote, in making new experiments than in disputing about those already made. So in other words, my study, my published results speak for themselves. I'm going to go on and do some new experiments. So here we see a restless man in a constant quest for improving things and also improving himself. This is the notion of the self-made man, not just that you deserve credit for you, but in Franklin's case, it was all about making yourself into a better version of yourself. And how Franklin did that, I'm going to take up next time. But I want to just say here that Franklin embodies this notion of the self-directed life, a life that stretches from Franklin's in the 18th century all the way to mine in the 21st. This part of America, I think, remains alive. Whether it will remain alive forever, I don't know, but it's still alive now. And for that, we owe Franklin a debt of gratitude.